getting a little worried because it's sunny out and it's not supposed to happen. And I'm thinking, no, all my readers are going to be torn between attending this talk about hiking or actually hiking. So thanks for coming out, and hopefully I'll give you lots of new places to go to explore after, on the next sunny day. If you're not familiar with me or my writing, I've been writing books for close to 20 years now in the area. I like to think that I've left no trail untouched, but there's still plenty of trails out there. I've hiked more than 32,000 miles in Washington alone and covered all the trails. This area, I mean, it's funny, if people know me, the question I hate being asked is, what's my favorite trail? Because I've hiked so many of them. But this is actually one of my favorite areas, and it's not because it's close, which it is, so it's perfect, but it's one of my favorite areas, particularly as we're going to move kind of onto the east side of this area, just for one, accessibility, the terrain. It's just spectacular. A lot of it looks like this. It's, when you think about the Cascades, those alpine meadows, the alpine lakes, this is the core. It's the heart of the Cascades. It's our backyard, more or less. So basically, the new book that just came out has, if you have the old guide, lots of changes. I've pulled old trails out. I've added lots of new ones. I've expanded. 136 hikes in the new book. Particularly, a lot of the new areas I've expanded are the Chelan and Wenatchee areas. So it's a great place to go spend the weekend. It's also a great place if you're looking where to hike now because of all the snow and the continuous winter here. It's approaching summer over there, and the flowers are starting to peak now, and May is a perfect time to go over there, so we'll definitely talk about that. And then also, if you're into overnighting, even though I call this day hiking, it's just, that's how they wanted to market the books and everything. Generally, the hikes can be anywhere from a couple miles round trip to up to 16 miles round trip, so there's definitely overnight opportunities here, and I'll mention campsites and things like that. So what we're going to do, we're just going to go through. I'm not going to show you all 136 hikes. I'd like you to get the book to get all the details, but also I'm not going to show you a lot of the popular places too. I have to put those in. So one of the things, if you do follow me and are aware of a lot of my works, I love to highlight what I call the trail less taken. Okay. So, if you've been, hiking for a while, you'll notice that in the last couple of years, particularly since COVID, there's been a huge influx of new people on the trail. And, that's great news, actually, that people are connecting to the trails. But it can be bad news in that a lot of the new users, aren't versed in a lot of outdoor etiquette, and they're all congregating on those same trails, and they're getting really, really crowded. So if you're looking for opportunities to find other places away from those crowded trails, I'm going to show you that. And often those trails are very, very close to the popular ones. It's amazing that it could just be even from the same trailhead. We'll talk about that, but because it's not Instagram famous, people aren't going there. All right, so remember this slide. I'll come back to it. This is one of my absolute favorite places. Anybody have any idea where this may be?
I read it in your homework. It's Katy Ridge.
Oh, perfect. All right. So someone's always on top of things. I like that. Excellent. Have you hiked it?
Yeah.
Excellent. All right. Let's go. Let's advance. All you do is just hit any arrow. Just hit an arrow. It should just hit the arrow. Yeah, perfect. All right. So very close. Right outside of Sultan. Sultan Basin, it's the DNR land, and there's a couple of lakes there. What's interesting about this is, again, very, very accessible. What's interesting about this area, this lake, it's a spectacular scene. It looks like behind the mountain. The elevation here is barely 3,000 feet. This is in the convergence zone. And if anyone has bought a house in Arlington or Linwood, and your realtor doesn't tell you about the convergence zone, it rains all the time there. So that's where the clouds come, they crash. So what happens here, this is such a wet part of the state. You get up to 160 plus inches of rain a year. And so what happens here is winter hangs longer, but you're going to see Alaska yellow cedars, something you typically see up 4,000 or 5,000 feet down this low. So it's a spectacular area. A lot of this area is in that convergence zone. All right, so talk about popular places. Who has not been to Wallace? I did this talk in Tacoma a couple days, and people actually have never been to Wallace Falls. What are you guys waiting for? Okay, so But Wallace Horse is one. I moved out here 33 years ago, and I went here within the first few weeks because you just see it from Highway 2. It's gotten a lot more crowded since that, 33 years ago. It's spectacular. It really is a great place. But it's very popular. The best time to go there is after it's been raining incessantly. Even while it's still raining, that'll keep some of the crowds. But even if you go there if the parking lot's full, head over to Wallace Lake, which is in the same state park, and it gets a fraction of the crowds. And you can do a nice loop I talk about. It's a nice 10, 12-mile loop you can do. So start early, hit the falls, come over here to the lake. And there's even another lake beyond that that's in the state park that you can camp at. You can get a permit and backcountry camp in there. And I've been in there a couple of times, and I've never seen anybody in there. So even in a popular place. If you've driven up Highway 2, and who hasn't, and been stuck in traffic up there, Haybrook Lookout, very, very popular. So you always see the cars lined up. It's an okay hike. It's just because it's there, people find it. Haybrook Ridge is far better. And you may not be familiar with Haybrook Ridge because it's a fairly new park. It's Snohomish County, and you access it from Index. And this is a continuation of the ridge. It was slated to be clear cut, and because it's Index's viewscape, a lot of residents there rally to protect that and turn this into this nice park. WTA, the Washington Trails Association, which I'm a member, I hope many of you are as well, built this trail here. They're going to eventually connect it to Haybrook Lookout, and you're going to get those great views of Bridal Veil Falls and Mount Index. So really nice, much better than the Lookout. Excuse me. And across the way, of course, Bridal is Mount Index and Lake Serene, another very, very popular trail. It's one again, this is not very high. It's only about 2,800 feet. It's one you can usually get in early in the season to get in there. So it's pretty incredible. Again, the falls, you can get right up in the falls. Make sure you're wearing a rain jacket because you're going to get sprayed. As we go farther up, going towards Skycomish, right now the road is washed out in here. So hopefully that's going to fix. But let me tell you about washouts. They're a blessing sometimes. And why am I saying that? Because Lake Dorothy right here, this is a very, very easy, popular hike. It's only a couple miles to get in here, not much elevation gain, so it can be very, very crowded. What happens when there's a washout? Those crowds aren't going to be there. So a mountain bike on the road, or because this is a Forest Service road, you can actually even use an e-bike or a motorized bike in there because as long as it's street legal, because it's a Forest Service road. If you can get that thing around the washout. Sometimes washouts are easy, sometimes they involve a little work, but take advantage sometimes of that. And I've done this on many popular trails. You mountain bike up there, you ditch the bike, now you're hiking in an area without the crowds, and you get an opportunity that you may not get again. So if you get up here, you can hike almost 2 miles along this lake. You can go farther to Bear Lake, Deer Lake, really, really nice area, close, fairly low in elevation. You can usually get in there in June. This one involves a little bit more work, so we're still in the Skycomish area. The West Fork of the Foss Lakes, spectacular. This is also in my 100 Classic Hikes book. So involves a lot of work, some serious elevation to get into, not overly long. You hit the first lake about 4 miles in, but you have a whole series of these huge, big alpine lakes and these cirques, and you just go within a couple, tenths of a mile. There's a whole series. You can keep going. This is the end of the developed trail. Then it kind of gets a little sketchy, but you keep going. This is Big Heart Lake, which is really, really something. Anybody been in there? Nice. Okay. All right, we're talking about Scorpion Mountain. This is on the north side, so the Beckler River area, again near Skycomish. In Scorpion, there are no scorpions here. It was named after a mine. And again, I get into a lot of this. My background's in history. I'm fascinated by this. I love the natural beauty, but also I love the cultural history. And I'm always intrigued that some of these names of places that people have lived there their whole life have no idea what the names mean or where it comes from. So I dig that up. I try to get into a lot of the names of these places in the history. So a lot of these trails too, if they were two old mines, you got to remember too, the whole idea of hiking for recreation is a fairly new concept. Trails, when they were built originally, were built for a purpose. Not to wander and be a flower child. They were built to get to a mine, for fire lookout, for patrolling, and they didn't mess with switchbacks or anything. So some of those old mine trails can be like this. So this one definitely has a lot of this. And you get in there, but again, just absolutely spectacular. This was shot a couple of years ago, end of June. It's a south slope. There's still lots of snow on the ridge, but that south slope and the glacier avalanche lilies are just out of this world. And you're only going to get this for a few weeks, and then it's just green. Okay. This is a brand new trail. It was just opened officially not that long, I think about a year ago. I had privy access to information to get up there before they officially opened it. And you could tell I just was able to get to it before winter got in there, before they opened it next year. So this is on Frog Mountain. It's also in that same area. So when the Wild Sky Wilderness Act was passed in 2008, part of a lot of people were they're skeptical that wilderness is locking people out and everything, and I'm not going to argue about all that, everything. But the main point is the Forest Service, part of the bill, the compromise was if people were worried they were going to lose access, let's build some more trails. And so there's actually some funding, which is rare, for trails, and they built several. This is one of them, and it does go in the Wild Sky Wilderness. And you can tell by just looking at this, it's an old burn zone. A lot of the areas in this region burned, which is another thing I want to bring. I know the last few years we've lived through these horrendous summers, and a lot of people are like, oh my God, everything's changing. And don't get me, the climate is changing, absolutely. But fires are not new here. We've had big fires, we've had dry summers. You can go all the way back. The native peoples talk about them. And so a lot of this, these fires here were 100 years ago. And what's happening, you can see in the high altitude that it takes forever to come back. But what you're left instead now, it's just these amazing, the mountain ashes, huckleberries, incredible beauty in the fall, and then these are great plants for wildlife. So you're always going to see bears down there and a lot of other animals foraging. So take advantage. This is a spectacular place. It will get more popular as more people learn about it. I had it all to myself. It was wonderful. Beckler Mountain is another one that is fairly new. It was built several years before Frog, but it's another one in this area. And it utilizes old logging roads, converted to trails, and then some new trail. And it's the same thing in this region. Really, really nice. There's some old growth. It's out of the wilderness. You pass an old trapper's mine. And there's even another trail next to it that's more of a mountain biker trail, the Alpine Baldy Trail in this area. So these are new trails that you might not be familiar with. Okay, very old. The trail is actually, the railroad was converted in the 90s, all volunteer did this. It's spectacular. This is part of the Great Northern Railroad, and this section through Stevens Pass, if you're into history, it's amazing. There's been entire books just written on this trail, and I co-wrote a book on Washington State history. We have a whole chapter on this. And you can walk in there. I give you several hikes you can do through the snow sheds. But basically, I'll just leave you with this. The main things that James Hill, the empire builder, pretty much when he put this railroad through, it was one of the main factors that changed the Northwest. It brought in lots of settlers and industry and everything. So this is one of the big events that actually changed the Northwest. And when the railroad was built, it was incredible. The original railroad actually went over Stevens Pass, and you can follow part of the Pacific Crest. And then they built a tunnel, but they didn't build it far enough, and so they went across these slopes. And back in those days, they were cutting wood with reckless abandonment, using it for the trestles and also lots of times for fuel. So you had these clear-cut slopes. Then you had some ridiculously serious winters. And what happened, this was the scene of the worst avalanche disaster in American history. 83 people died here. Train got stuck, and it was almost like they could have gotten out, and they sat there, and some people left, and they waited, and then here come the avalanches and swept 83 people to their death. So it ranks in the top 3 for Washington's worst natural disasters. The other one being the Oso landslide, really close to us, and then Mount St. Helens. So we have some serious geographical events here, and then it's just fast. You go through, and so they eventually after that they built these big snow sheds. So they changed the design on it in the 19-teens. All immigrant labor. These people just worked hard, and they came from about 12, 16 different countries. About half of them were of Japanese descent, and they built these incredibly big snow sheds that you could still hike through. And you do it on a hot day because it's air conditioning, these big concrete snow sheds. So lots of cool things to say. What does that 1720 represent? That's a milepost. That's the distance from St. Paul. That's where the railroad started. Okay. All right, Kelly Creek. This is also in that area, and you'll be able to hike more of the railroad. The horseshoe bridge is gone, which is too bad, and the horseshoe tunnels, that's gone. It's only been in a couple places they did that, where they actually built a horseshoe tunnel, the railroad. It was here and then over at Rogers Pass in British Columbia, near Revelstoke was another place. Same thing, the Canadian Railroad trying to make it across. Really just engineering feats. So you'll see parts of the remnants of that, and then go up. And what I love about Kelly Creek, it's an old trail that got reopened. Again, you won't see anybody. It's another one. I've been here on a Saturday in the summertime, and I'm the only one up there. It's this, I mean, just incredible old growth. It's in the Wild Sky Wilderness. And then when you get to the end of the trail, about 4 miles in, you have a choice. You can follow another old trail back to Scorpion, which is really nice, or you can scramble up to Captain Point, which is where this shot was taken. And you're looking out south towards the Alpine Lakes Wilderness. That's Mount Hinman and Mount David over in there. On the south side of this area is, again, by the railroad, are the Surprise Lakes. And I like to always tell everybody, and my wife's actually here doing it, I tell the story. This was the very first place that I was dating this woman from the University of Washington, where I took her on a hike. That woman's my wife now, so just so Surprise Lake is definitely, it was a big surprise for us, and it has special meaning to me. Great hike. That's the lower lake there. It's 4 miles in to get in there, and you can go another mile to get to Granite Lake. Really nice. There's campsites in there, and if you're really feeling energetic, you absolutely have to go up to Surprise Mountain, where this was shot from, an old fire lookout, and you're going to get this view. That's a 16-mile round trip. But you can camp down at the lake and do it as a day trip, or if it's too much.
It would have been nice if it was that sunny the day we were there.
No, it wasn't. It was pouring rain, but it got nicer after, though. I remember that. Yeah, I've been in there several times. So yeah, that was. And same thing. We did Trap Lake in the rain too. We did the whole thing. Yeah. Hitchhiking out. We did this one way, hitchhiking out in the pouring rain, and a trail angel saved us, which was really nice. Yeah.
Do you have Thunder Lakes in there?
No, because that's off trail. I just mentioned it. Yeah, Thunder Lakes. So if it's off trail, that's just so I mention it. That's going to be out of the scope for most people. That's a really neat area, though. Yeah, yeah. So just Trap, because this is right off the Pacific Crest Trail, and same thing. Before the Pacific Crest. The through hikers start coming, and you can usually smell them, so you know when they're coming. And other than that, though, it's pretty quiet in there. People aren't camped in there or anything like that. So this is a really nice. I've been in here, a few times too, and never seen anybody. So really nice place. And that's looking down. This is the headwaters, which you're looking down of Icicle Creek. So if you follow that, goes out towards Leavenworth. Yeah. Okay, Blanca Lake. This is one of the most popular hikes in Washington. This was one of the first hikes my son did. He was about 5 months in utero here. That was a good hike for him. But spectacular hike. What's interesting about this, it gets a lot of people because it's Instagram famous. You can see why. It's not an easy hike, though. So I've seen all kinds of interesting people on this one. But it is a spectacular hike. I don't know why they call it Blanca, because it's aquamarine, so somebody flunked Spanish or something. And again, getting back to climate change, I was talking earlier about the fires, not that climate change isn't really, we've had fires, but I'll tell you where I'm definitely seeing the change. So when I did this hike 30-something years ago, the glacier was about down to here. I mean, so I'm seeing the glacial recession happening all over, and it's scary. Let me give you a little trick. Do you know there's one place in Washington where glaciers are growing? As a matter of fact, it's like one of only a couple places in the world. So we have the opportunity to actually study glacial accretion as well as recession. Anybody? There's a place? You know how. Anybody know where glaciers are growing in Washington? Mount St. Helens. The crater, when the mountain blew, it created this huge crater about 1,300 feet deep, and the snow just blows into and it doesn't see the sun. It's north exposure. It's unbelievable, the glacier, how it's growing. There's two of them in the origin, and now they're connected. They kept going. So it's a place that we actually can study glacial growth. Yeah, and we're losing everyone else. So it's really fascinating. St. Helens is I'll have to talk about it. I wrote a book on St. Helens. It's another fascinating place. If you haven't been down there yet, I don't know what you're waiting for, because it's changing so fast. All right, here we go. See, this is again in that Skykomish area, which is also where the Skykomish River, which is also where Blanca. Again, this is close to Frog. You see, it's all fire zone. This all burned, and you're starting to see some of the subalpine ferns. But this is wonderful wildlife habitat. Anyone about wildlife, they love edge. Old growth forests are great. I love them, but they're quiet. I mean, there's not that much. You want this edge effect where there's lots of different age, trees at different ages. That's where there's going to be a lot of wildlife diversity. I've seen lots of bears on this trail, which is also, it's always funny. I always like when I talk about bears, either people are like cool or they're absolutely terrified. I'm a bear magnet, if you want to hike with me. I see them all the time. And the thing was, and people have asked me too, I mean, I'm not worried about it. I've never had, and I hope I don't blow the streak here. I've never had any issues with bears. You have to be bear smart. Know if you see one, what to do and all. And usually they just take a look at you and then they're gone. They don't want anything to do with you. So, and that's true with grizzly bears too. I've spent a little time in grizzly bear country too. Though you have to be a little smarter there. Okay. So this is also in the area. So I was showing you Blanca Lake. Very, very popular hike, but I just showed you West Katy and Bald Eagle. This trailhead for these guys is 2 miles beyond Blanca, and you can pass. It's crazy, all the cars overflowing, and then you get up here and there's only a handful of cars where 4 trails branch out. So this is another wilderness area. I love this area too. There's some great backpacking in here. Never see lots of people in here. It's just wonderful. This is the Monte Cristo range here you're looking at. So a nice day hike is just to get up to Bald Eagle Peak. It's about a 12-mile round trip to get in there. And then if you want to go farther, there's some great stuff. All right, back to easy, close to Highway 2, right off of Highway Stevens Pass is Valhalla Lake. And there's 2 ways to get in here. There's the PCT, it's longer, it's quieter. And then there's a back doorway, which is shorter and much busier. This was shot from Mount McCausland. Gorgeous view in the fall. It's even more gorgeous. But what I should tell you, if you're wondering about Valhalla, that's Norse mythology, the connection. So what's fascinating, from 1912 to 1931, there was a forest supervisor in Wenatchee. This was all part of the National Forest District he was responsible for. His name was A.H. Sylvester. He was responsible for naming over 2,000 place names. Wouldn't that be fun? I mean, and he went through biblical names, Roman mythology, Greek mythology, Minoan mythology. I mean, also then he started literary characters, his friends' wives. I mean, just going through all these names. And then some were just like, oh, I lost my camera here. We'll call it Kodak Peak. So all these names here. So rest assured, if it's an interesting name from this part of the state, Sylvester probably had something to do with it. So. All right, this is Grizzly Peak. I was just talking about bears earlier that at one point grizzlies were pretty common in this area. They're not. If you see a grizzly in this region now, you will be on the evening news. Hopefully as a great experience for you and the grizzly. But what I love about this hike, it's not a bear of a hike at all. It's on the PCT. It's a long hike though, but you don't need to go the entire distance because the nice thing about the Pacific Crest Trail, it was engineered for horses. And horses don't want to do that. They just want nice like that. So this is a great trail. These are a couple of my trail running friends here. It's a wonderful trail for running. I mean, it's just so well groomed and you just go. And then just get this amazing view. That's Heather Lake down below, not the Heather Lake up the Mountain Luth Highway, which you'll be darned to find heather growing there for one thing. And also lots of people. You see there's not much activity going on down there. So we'll revisit Heather Lake again. But really great. And then we're looking out down towards the Lake Wenatchee area. And that's Labyrinth Mountain over there, getting back to the Minoan. We'll talk more about that later. And this is another, once you go over Stevens Pass, you're going to Highway 2, there's a big ridge, about 15 miles on the north of you. It's called Nason Ridge. There are no easy hikes on this thing. They're brutal. But the great news is they're never crowded. And usually the snow melts out fast over there, so you can usually get to a lot of these peaks early in the season where everything else is trapped. So this is on Rock Mountain, which is the 3rd highest peak in this range. Used to be a fire lookout out there. And this is about my hiking partners here. This is about the amount of people I usually encounter. When I'm lucky, a few times I'll sit there and there'll be some hairy, smelly things behind me. No, not through hikers. Mountain goats, over in there. So there's a lot of mountain goats in this area. Which leads me to right here. So this is Alpine Lookout, which is actually the easiest hike on Nason Ridge. It's actually not too bad. It's 10 miles round trip. Got a little bit of a climb to begin, and then it's a pretty gentle ridge walk. Love to do it in the fall. It's a great hike in the fall. It's hot in the summer. Yeah, I've done it in June too. And yeah, it's notorious for mountain goats. They're always up there. You just sit up there for a while. You can smell them. It's like a petting zoo up there. It's really cool. And these guys you have to actually worry about more than bears. People get more worried about bears. But the mountain goats in the Cascades are pretty decent. It's the ones in the Olympics, and that's a whole other story. And I think they've done, because there's been inbreeding and things like that, there's been problems over there. I wouldn't worry too much about these guys. That's Lake Wenatchee over there, great view. And then on the south side of Highway 2 in this area is another area that very, very few people go into. It's the Chewacam Range. And Chewacam means water sources. This is actually from a native name. I'm not sure which tribe, but it means many water sources flowing, something like, which you'll see after the snow. We get all these cascades and creeks. It's incredible in here. And again, old burn zone. So it's a great wildlife area. Long trails to get in here. You won't see anybody. It's wonderful. All right. Moving farther over to the east, there's a whole other series of lakes called the Scottish Lakes, because they have names like Eileen. And these, again, were named by Mr. Sylvester. A lot of these are more backpacking, but this one is one of the shorter ones. It's about 8-mile round trip to get in. And again, this is shot in June. It's usually, you can still see lots of snow. But it's, again, if you're looking for hikes early in the season, because a lot of the high country stuff we can't get into until July, August. So this is another good option here. And then we keep going down Highway 2. We start getting into the warm areas. So we're getting towards Wenatchee. The Peshastin Pinnacles, you probably have seen those driving by. You think mostly climbers. And it was climbers that rallied to protect this. There used to be private land. It's in an orchard. But there's trails all in here. And you can hike it. And you can just sit there and watch the climbers. There's usually birds of prey. It's great for flowers. Great for ticks. So be careful when you're out there. And then these sands, very, very different than a lot. You have sandstone ledge. So geology is not one of my big strong point areas, so I'm not quite sure the origins of it, but you'll notice right away, it's like, wait a minute, this is really different. We'll talk more about that in the Mission Ridge, how it's very different there. Okay, I was telling you how the flowers, this was shot 2 years ago around this time of year. Again, the flowers are incredible. This is right outside of Kashmir, and it's called Kashmir Canyons. It's brand new, it was just opened. If you're not familiar with land trusts, I belong to several, including the Skagit Land Trust. The land trusts are amazing. They buy land. There's nothing controversial about it through willing buyers, and they protect it. And sometimes they'll keep it open for agriculture or keep it open for current use, but lots of times for recreation. And they'll either keep it as a preserve, or they'll transfer it to a government agency. So they're keeping this one as a preserve. They have stricter rules. There's no dogs allowed in this one, mountain bikes and everything. But it's just spectacular. About 12 miles of new trails in here. Gorgeous. You got to check it out. All right, so that Mission Ridge area is fascinating too. So again, this is outside of Wenatchee, between Wenatchee and Highway 97. Again, it's wonderful to go early in the season because it's warm, it's sunny, it's dry, and it feels like being in New Mexico or something like that. It's the geology, the sandstone, it's mostly pine instead of fir and hemlock. Really neat area. And again, if you're worrying about, you're sitting there going, I know, that looks like rattlesnake country. It is, but again, I wouldn't worry about rattlesnakes out here. I've been hiking the state a lot, and I can count how many rattlesnakes I've been. And I just got back from Georgia, and I've hiked in North Carolina, and I count more snakes in a day there than I have in 30 years here. So we have nothing to worry about here. North Carolina, I've never seen so many nasty cottonmouths and everything. These are Pacific rattlesnakes, and they are mellow. They will. And I love telling this statistic too. So I looked this up. So people are worried about rattlesnakes. So there's something like 16 people a year on average in this state get bit by a rattlesnake. And the fatality is like maybe one, maybe not. But it gets better, like 16, like that's 16. No, let's break it down. Out of those 16, they're all young males, okay? Now, you know what it involves? Here it is. Here's a couple guys. Hey, hold my beer. I'll show that rattlesnake. It's people trying to catch. I've never, ever read an account of someone hiking or trail running getting ambushed by a rattlesnake. So I think we're good. So watch your hands if you're scrambling, and don't try to catch a rattlesnake to impress a woman, okay? or a woman impressing a man. I mean, Okay, this is again part of the Chelan Douglas Land Trust, preserves that you might not be familiar with, and This one is right outside of Leavenworth. You're looking down into the Icicle Valley. It's the Boundary Butte. It's an old burn area again, and they're restoring a lot of this. Wonderful, wonderful place. You get great views right up into the Icicle Valley, into Wedge Mountain. So a really nice place to hike. All right, I'm not going to talk about Kolchak Lake. Who has not been there? Just one person? 2 people. Yeah, 3. They're probably the only 3 people in the entire state that haven't been there. It's really, and no, it's spectacular. You'll want to go there. It really is, but it's overrun. It's overexposed. Yeah, you're gonna have it's gonna be a hard time to have a good experience there. Plus parking issues, and so it said go here, go to Stewart Lake. It starts with the same trailhead, so you still have to get there really early because to secure a parking space. Get there really early, and you'll watch. The trail is like this wide and beaten down, and as soon as that junction, it just changes. It's here, and you actually, those are animal tracks now on the trail, and everyone's going up to take their selfie at Kolchak. So this is really, really nice in Stewart. And then I talk about, you can go even beyond this to Horseshoe Lake, which is really nice. That's Mount Stewart there, which is the highest non-volcanic mountain in Washington. All right, talk about burns. So there was this swept through in the 90s. Again, you can see it's taking, and there was another one more recent than that. It takes a long time for this stuff to come back. So get that sunscreen on, but opens with the views. 8 Mile Lake is a pretty easy, short hike to get in there. So 6 miles round trip, not much elevation. There's lots of campsites in there if you want to spend time in there. And then if you want to get go up farther, there's lots of places you can go. The Icicle Ridge is brutal. It's like Nason. It's just 7,000 feet. You're starting from really low. The trails are brutal. 4th of July, it's 5,700 feet vertical climb on a south exposure to get to the lookout up here. But you can get there early. It melts out early. You get up there in May. So the weather's not bad. But look at the views. Look at over Cashmere Mountain over here. And I've done this one a couple of times, the ridge, and we don't run into anybody up there. That's not true. We ran into 2 people. They're really nice people. And again, for easy stuff, the Icicle Gorge Trail. This is a nice little 4-mile loop that connects campgrounds. If you've never hiked, if you're trying to introduce somebody to hiking, don't take them on the last one I showed you. Take them on this. This is a wonderful, you're going along the water, there's waterfalls, there's a gorge, big old growth ponderosa pines. Really nice trail, really nice in the fall. Another, again, and this is amazing. So in the Icicle Valley, which is right outside of Leavenworth, one of the most popular vacation spots, and you get there early, and you're in this line of cars going up the valley, and you'll watch. 90% of them are pulling off to go up to Kolchak, and then you get back. It's unbelievable how many more trails are in the valley that aren't crowded. It's crazy. This is another one, Bootjack. Short hike. It's only about 8 miles round trip, but it's steep. And this is the view you're going to get of the Icicle this way, Mount Stewart that way. You've got cinquefoil, beautiful flowers up there, and nobody. Okay. All right, another short hike on the other side. This one's a little popular, but not too bad. On the north side of Highway 2. Again, this is actually Minotaur. This is Theseus Lake. Minotaur is the one most people go to. Most people will just look at that lake. It's 600 feet down. Like, I don't feel like going down there. But if you do go down there, you'll have it to yourself because most people will stop at Minotaur. And then it used to be a scramble to go up to top of Labyrinth. It's a trail now. It's really nice. And when I was up there a couple of years ago, there were young kids doing it with their parents. So it's not exposed or anything. It's spectacular. So I write about that too. And then the Heather Lake we were looking down at before. This one's only about 7.5, 8 mile round trip, not much elevation gain. There's a tricky creek crossing, so you don't want to do it too early in the season, but it's really nice, doesn't have the crowds. You can camp up here. Gets a little buggy, so maybe you want to wait till later in the year. Pear Lake, also in this region. This is all in the Lake Wenatchee. I absolutely love the Lake Wenatchee region. You could stay in Leavenworth or stay in Wenatchee, or you can stay at the campground or an Airbnb cabin. It's a great place to base for a few days and then have all these great day hikes from there. And then the weather's always so much better over there too than here. So Pear Lake over here, that's Labyrinth Mountain we're looking at there. So you can scramble up from the south side. Really nice. This is off the Pacific Crest Trail. Lots of good camp spots there. And then Katy Ridge, we were talking about that earlier. This is a feeder trail into the Pacific Crest Trail. The flowers are absolutely, again, this is one of my favorite areas. I try to get in here at least once a year for like long trail runs I do in here. It's just great. It's just really gradual stuff. You can go in there forever. You can backpack in here. In the fall, it's spectacular too. The blueberry bushes, it's all carpets of red. Lots of bears in here too. You see that? Another easy trail you probably haven't heard of. This is off the Little Wenatchee River Gorge. So again, it's a remnant of what used to be a long trail up the valley. It's only 2 miles left. It goes along this gorge on the river. It starts from this nice little campground. And again, I've been on this one 3 times, and I've never seen anybody on it. In Lake Wenatchee State Park itself, most people, they drive to the beach on the south camp. On the north side, you have to walk to the beach, and a few people do that. And then there's a whole, nice little trails that go along the lake and around, and they're quiet. They're really quiet to do. And you're camping there to make nice evening walks, so definitely check it out. That's Dirty Face Peak that we're looking at there. That's a great hike. I think that's coming up next. Yeah. So this is the view from Dirty Face looking at the inlet of Lake Wenatchee. So this is where the White River and the Little Wenatchee come in. Some pretty spectacular wetlands in there. Great views. That's Nason Ridge, all that we're looking at there. This is another hike you can do early in the season. It melts out early. I've been up there in the end of May. Usually just a little bit of snow left on the summit. This is one of the hardest hikes in the book. It's one of my favorites. It's incredible. I will probably put it in the redo of the 100 Classics. There's so much to say about this hike. I took Heather on this on one of the times I've been up there. It's brutal. It's 16 miles round trip, 5,700 feet of vertical. You have exposure. They built a fire lookout out here. This is incredible. I can't even imagine being stationed out there in an electrical storm. So this is if you're prone to vertigo, you probably don't want to do this. What makes it even tougher though is after you have to wait till late in the season to get in there because the snow melts, because it can be dangerous. But then there's no water. So that can be so you got to carry a lot of water in there. And you're looking down at Lake Wenatchee's down that valley there. And it was named the Kingdom of David, one of Sylvester's. He has all these biblical names around there. This is what this is what you got to do if you go up there. You got to find what I call the throne of stone. Built by the ancient mound builders. I can't resist. So this is the outhouse that's on the top. And a lot of people miss this because you can't see it. When you're on the top of the summit, you're looking around for it, you just see the rocks. I've known people that have gone up there like, we couldn't find it. What's amazing though, and it's hard to capture in this picture, but this just drops 2,000 feet, something like that. So if you're the fire lookout and you're up there on a Friday night pushing back the Merlot and they need to go, you got to be really careful over here. Let me tell you, because it's a long way down. But it's incredible. It's my absolute favorite outhouse. Okay. You don't hear me talk about that like in Seattle's Discovery Park or something like that. Okay. Down below, it's mellower down below. So that valley we're looking at, that's the Indian Creek area. WTA has been reopening the trail here. This was a feeder to the PCT. You get about 5 miles now. It's really nice. And this is what if you go in the fall, the avalanche shoots, the foliage, it's gorgeous. You can camp in there. And when I'm not showing the first couple of miles, spectacular old growth forest. Really, really nice. And quiet. Again, another trail. You won't see anybody. Garland, you won't see anybody here either. I'm showing you all these trails. And I should tell you, in the book, I started a couple years ago putting crowd ratings in my book. People always want to know the beauty rate, so those 1 to 5. So I'm showing you a lot of the ones, which mean, you're pretty much going to be on your alone. So this is the Antioch Mountains. It's the divide between the Chihuahua River and the Antioch River, which is here. And you can see this got scorched pretty badly, burns. But WTA has been reopening the trails. I've been in there recently. Things are looking good. So this is a neat area. A lot of old mining history here. So lots of old mines in this area.
Antioch River in there?
Yeah, that's what I just showed you.
The whole thing burned.
Yeah, almost all of it. The whole area. The North Fork, however, is green. I'll talk about that. That's nice because the North Fork is pretty spectacular, and that did not burn. But yeah, almost. If you're going into the ice lakes, it's a burn for 14 miles. Yeah, I'm not talking about the Pasayten's the same. The Pasayten Wilderness, which is an amazing place on the British Columbia border, it's over 500,000 acres big. 70% of it is burned in the last 30 years. Now a lot of it is lodgepole pine. It's high. It needs to burn, but it's the intensity of those burns that they're bad. But here we go. No burns here on the Chihuahua. That's nice. So Garland is that where we were before, is that peak back there. That's where we were standing before. And we were looking into the other drainage. So on the other side of that, it's all burned. On this side, it's green. And this is another place, I've been here a few times, talk about a wilderness valley. And I mean, the last time I was in here with my trail running partner, we showed up like, there's a car at the trailhead. What's up with that? One person. But going there, and you can just keep going, a day trip, just hike a few miles, go around, or come out a one way if you can, and come out through Karn, which is really nice. And you get these views. If there are grizzly bears in this region, this is where they're going to be. That's their habitat. But there's lynx, there's wolverines, there's wolves. I mean, there's a lot of wildlife out here. Estes Butte, again, this is the Chihuahua area. I just absolutely love this area. And there's all kinds of car camps down there. You can just camp, and some of them are free, some are just a few bucks. Great place to set up. I will warn you, though, of all the areas I hike in the state, this is one of the absolute worst for mosquitoes. Just that east side of the Cascades, the sun, the water, the pools, it can get pretty buggy in here. So I like it late in the year. That's where a lot of these shots are from September. So this is another old fire lookout. Looking right into the Chihuahua, all the way up. We'll look at that basin later in there, but Trinity used to be a mining town, the town of Trinity, right in that bay. It's privately owned now, so the trail goes around, but it still has the generator in there, there's electricity, it's just incredible, the history in there. Yeah. Little Giant Pass, this is, if we hike out of that, out of the Chihuahua, going on the west side, we're gonna come to this, and this is incredible. There's 3 ways to the Napiqua Valley. There's 3 ways in. None of them are easy. This is the shortest way. You have to ford the Chihuahua River, so you can there's usually like maybe 2 months max, 6 weeks that you can actually do this hike safely. And then you get in here, it's out of this world. And the meadows, the blueberries, the bears, the view, it's wonderful if you can do it. Karn Mountain, so we're going farther up the Chihuahua towards the end. Again, lots of mining history in here. Short, steep hike to get up here. You start getting the transition with the alpine larches. We'll talk about those too. There's some beautiful foliage in there. And that big mountain in the back, that's Mount Maud. And it's over 9,000 feet. It has the distinction of being the highest mountain in Washington pretty much that you can walk up. Nothing technical. So there is a trail, sort of, to get up there. You know, some scrambling, but nothing, you don't need ropes or anything like that to go up there. All right, so I was showing you before Trinity at the end of the basin. There's a Chihuahua Basin, felt incredible. This is Red Mountain, you can see in the fall, it definitely is. There's nothing, I mean, it's all tailings and mines in there. It's incredible. The trail here, you can see it's an old mining road. And this is federal wilderness now, so it's going to stay the way it is, so you follow, and there's ruins, there's all kinds of shafts and equipment and all kinds of stuff, except people. There's nobody. But if we did this 100 years ago, there'd be people all over the place in there. So wonderful, wonderful area if you're exploring there. And then another area I absolutely love, so it's in the southern part of the Entiat Mountains, the Mad River area. And this is where the mountains, you notice, very different. They're gentle. You're up high, but we're up at over 5,000 feet here. And the Mad River starts, and what keeps a lot of people from this area is because it's motorized. It's not wilderness. So a lot of people are like, I don't want to be around the dirt bikers. But let me tell you, I've hiked in here a bunch. I love running in here because it is groomed. If it's groomed for wheels, it's groomed for shoes. And there's groups of dirt bikers here, and most of them are just retired Boeing guys who like to putz around on these quiet bikes. They're not yahoos. So don't let that discourage you. And they're some of the nicest people I've met out there. So nice 12-mile round trip with not even 1,000 feet of elevation gain is to the Blue Creek Meadow. And that's an old dude ranch. It was used up into the 1940s. So really cool. You can camp there right now and everything. Lots of history in this area. There is a window, though, that motorbikes aren't allowed, so like up until July 15th. But don't let that discourage you. And if you go during the weekday, it's always quiet. Here's another area. This is all part of the Mad River area, the Tie Ridge. So there's a beautiful fire lookout on Signal Mountain. You can hike along here and connect. You can see this was a burn from the 90s. And you can see how long it takes for this stuff to start coming back. And then one of the most popular hikes in the Entiat Valley, because it's short, it's easy, it's beautiful, Silver Falls. And what's fascinating, the first time I went there, I remember hiking, it's only less than 2 miles, and look at the stonework, the railing, like, wow, the CCC did an incredible work here. They didn't. It was built by the Forest Service like in the 80s, replicating the CCC work. So it's gorgeous. I mean, they did a really nice job with it. And then into the Antioch, this is what we're looking at. This is completely scorched, except if I was to turn around where the campsites are, it's green. There's green forest over here. So you can still camp in here because you do not want to camp in that stuff. Because when it gets windy, those trees come down. So that's something, some people don't think about that sometimes. You don't want to be in snags camping. Find some nice, solid green trees. Easy hike to get into, very little elevation gain. If you keep going beyond that, it's much harder, but much more spectacular. The Larch Lakes, as you can see, it did not burn in these basins. There's 2 of these guys. They're pretty shallow. I've gone in the summertime, I've gone like, you could go out halfway out to the lake. It's only waist deep and it warms up. It's really, really nice. And then if you do it in the fall, it's gorgeous. It's golden. That peak up there is a walk up, 5th of July mountain. Fern Lake, this is in the North Fork of the Antioch, which is a de facto wilderness. It's not protected, but it's pretty much a wilderness. So the only thing that's different, it's non-motorized, but mountain bikes are allowed in there. But you won't encounter too many, especially this trail. I call this like a poor man's enchantments. There's nobody here. And what's interesting, it's spectacular. I've been in here a couple of times. It's brutal to get in here. I've never seen anybody. And what's neat about this, I remember the first time I did this, I'm looking and I'm like, there's not a fern to be found here. Because it was not named for the plant. It was named for a ranger's wife, you know. So again, some of these things, it's interesting. It's like in the Olympics, there's a moose lake. There's no moose in the Olympics. It was named after a ranger's horse. There's a lot of these things that people, I'm going to see the moose. Saying there's a badger valley. There's no badgers in the Olympics. But so no ferns here, but it's gorgeous. And outside Chelan. So when I wrote the original book, there was very few hikes in Chelan and Wenatchee. So what's cool, I mean, Wenatchee's changing a lot. And like all change, it's for good, you know, for better and for worse. But for better, I mean, it's really turning into a recreational hub, which is great. So people are moving there for lifestyle. You've got all the stuff at your, at your backyard, and it's sunny and warm over there. So this is in Chelan. This was former Washington Fish and it was Washington Fish and Wildlife Land. And there's 2 parts of this. There's the more groomed stuff down there. You actually take a wheelchair on that stuff. And there's a fishing pond right along the river. And then the more rugged trails here, and you get this nice view. That's the BB Bridge down there. This is right outside of Chelan. And again, it doesn't get crowded on these guys. And then again, near Manson, Chelan, you can see Lake Chelan. Echo Ridge, it was originally developed as a backcountry ski area. And now it's all year round for mountain bikers, hikers, and trail runners. I love trail running this stuff because it's all former logging roads. Really, really well groomed, and the view, it's just spectacular. And they have races and events out there. Really nice. And you get out there early in the season, too. This is at Lake Chelan State Park. It's a very popular park. You can camp around the lake, launch your boat. So you bet you got the 7 o'clock message, right? We knew that was going to happen. Yeah, we were wondering about that. Yeah, okay, sorry. Yeah, we chastised a few people about that. But welcome. Okay. So this is right in Lake Chelan State Park. Nice little nature trails. You can camp right there. So Bitterbush. There's another trail called the Little Bear Trail because there was a little bear that was found there. Again, just beautiful. The Arrowleaf Balsam. You want to go now, right now. Head to Chelan this weekend because it's going to rain here. Okay. And then Chelan Butte. And in the original, when I did the original book, I had you going up the road. Now there's a trail that goes up it. The first half of the trail is pretty gentle. You can get up and you get views the entire way. And then it gets brutal. So you don't have to go the entire way. But if you do, I mean, again, you're going to get this view and you get these guys. Okay, not mountain goats, but bighorns. So this area has a large bighorn population. It's all Washington Fish and Wildlife property. So it's really cool to see them. Then, even though this is technically the North Cascades, a lot of this, because the access is from Chelan, I put this in this book, but I have hiked this from the Met House side as well. This is out of this world. This is the Sawtooth Range. So Lake Chelan's down here, the Met House on this side. A lot of this part is out of wilderness. It's open to motorized, except for this trail, Summer Blossom Trail. This was it was an old sheep drive. And again, if we went back 100 years ago, there'd be a lot of activity out here. There'd be herders out here, there's sheep. People worked the land back then. And now you just get up here, it's like this is the view. You're at over 7,000 feet here, but you're starting at 6. Really easy to get up here, and you can keep going. I absolutely love this region. All right, let's talk about Stehekin. Who has not been to Stehekin? Put it on your must-do. You got to go there. Yeah, yeah. There's so many cool things to say about Stehekin. One of the things I always love, when I travel anywhere, so when I first moved to Washington, I pull the maps out. And just like Ed Abbey, I look for those empty spots, right? And I remember, what is this community at the end of this lake with no roads? So it's always intrigued me. So I've been to Stehekin 4 times now. We took my son there for the first time. Loved it, absolutely. If you want to really get off the grid, it's a place. There's about 70 people that actually live there year-round. Half of them are related. They run all the businesses and everything. Good people. And then Park Service. So it's part of the National Park Service owns most of the land. It's the Lake Chelan National Recreation Area. And as you know, you can only get there by boat, seaplane, or you can hike it. Unbelievable trail. Get in there. Go in the fall, which is obviously, this is shot October 1. You can camp there, you can stay at a lodge, or there's some nice cabins you can rent, but I tell you, they go fast, so if you're secure. But make it a point, there's nothing else like it in Washington. It's such an incredible place. So this is one of the harder hikes to do from here. This is Boulder Butte. It is over 6,000 vertical to hit this point. You're coming right out from the lake. The lake is at 1,000 feet. What's interesting too, when we get on the boat, people ask, because it's 51 miles. 51. People are like, what's the elevation at the other end of the lake? People ask that. So we're failing in science. But so
depends on the tide.
Exactly. Yeah. I wish it was up higher because it would make this hike easier. But the good news on this, you don't have to go very far. This is only shot from a couple thousand feet up. Here's Stehekin down, and there's a 12-mile road up the valley. And usually, if you rent a place, a cabin, you get a car. They give you, it's part of the deal. So you can drive through the trailheads. And there's a shuttle service in there too, so you can get around, or mountain bike. You mountain bike. So it's cool. So I love this. You get up here, it's just amazing to look down. And then this is part of the route, the historic route. If you're hiking into Chelan, I talk about this in my backpacking book, up War Creek. You come up through this area. So lots of interesting history. That used to be one of the original ways to get in. Here's one of the cool things in the valley. This is all part of the National Park Service. So I have a nice little loop, a couple of them, much easier than that last hike I showed you. You start at the waterfall here, beautiful, beautiful falls, and you hike down, you follow an old hand-dug irrigation ditch, and from that water, and to an old orchard, which is the Park Service owns. And again, you want to go late in the year because they encourage you. It's your land. Pick apples. So we'd go every night. We'd go down there, pick an apple. They were delicious, wonderful, and just wandering around this orchard, and nobody's here. It was just incredible. And they want you to take bushels, and then they actually have an apple fest in October, and they do cider pressing and all. We missed that this year, but you got to get there. Stehekin is out of this world. Another hike in Stehekin. This is the Stehekin River. You start from the airstrip. It's just a dirt strip with a couple planes and bicycles and cruddy cars waiting there, and then you hike and you follow the river down to the lake. And what's cool is you're across. There's the waterfall there, but again, wildlife. I haven't seen moose are in this region, but I've seen the tracks in there all the time. Big moose track. There's old growth cedars because kind of even though you're way over in Stehekin, there's rattlesnakes in the Sunny Place Valley. But it's weird. You have tracks that look like the Western Washington too. You have the wet cedar, so it's a really interesting transition zone. And then the hardest hike in the valley is McGregor. The actual summit is here. But I tell people to stop here because getting here requires going through here. It's not a hike, it's a scramble, and it's exposed. But to get to this point, it's about 6,000 vertical to get up there. McGregor, who's hiked Cascade Pass? Yeah, it's probably, and when you hike and you look out and you see that big giant mountain, and then that's McGregor. So there was a fire lookout out there at one time because of view you can see everything from up there. So you won't be able to see Lake Chelan if you end here, but again you can see Cascade Pass and see Glacier Peak and all that. And again, it's another one. It's daunting to get to this point. There's alpine larches. You don't have to go up that far. You get a couple miles. The first couple views start in a couple miles. Some really nice views, avalanche, and that's looking up Agnes Gorge, which is also a great hike in the book. So you can see. Glacier and everything. So again, you don't have to go all the way to get that. And then I think this is, we're back, so kind of wrapping up the range here. Blewett Pass. So again, we're not too far from Wenatchee. Again, a very, very interesting area in that it's dry, it's sunny. It doesn't feel like Washington, but you can see Mount Rainier from a lot of these places. So this is a great Tronson Ridge, really nice hike. Again, hot in the summer. Fall is wonderful. Fall's a great time to be in there. And then looking over at the Mount Stewart Range over in that area, we can see Rainier and just great ridge hike. And there's easy hikes in here too, like the Sauk Forest Discovery Trail. And there's some western larches in there. So the alpine larches, they're up high. They're usually spent by middle of September. But the western larches, which are lower, usually are good for another month. So you can go in, even in November. I've been in this region, even the first week of November, there's still western larches in here. So you'll start getting the ponderosa pine, the larches in here. The views of Stewart, just a really nice, less than 3 mile loop in here. A lot of people stop and use the restroom on Blue Wood Pass, but they don't do the hike. It's a great little hike. And then again, outside of Wenatchee. And if I was to write this book, well, I did write this book 15 years ago. There's so many more trails because that Lake Chelan, that Chelan-Douglas Land Trust has been doing some amazing work protecting. I mean, Wenatchee's right there. You don't even need a car. You can just take an Uber or a bus to the trailhead or walk. This was shot in May of 2 years ago. This is why you want to go. The flowers are just out of this world in the Sage Hills. Just an incredible place. It's popular mountain biking too. If you're a mountain biker, some of these trails are open, and again, wonderful for running too because the trails are groomed and it's just wonderful. I did get rattled out twice on one run out there, but it was one of those things I'm zoning out and rattle, 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 and I look down, and it's like a little ditch, and you just see the tail end of the thing. It's like, back off, dude, and you just, okay, and it goes. They're not going to ambush you, so don't worry. And the trails are nice and wide, and I wouldn't go running off through the trails. This is Horse Lake. This has been a big, with the Chelan-Douglas Land Trust. This was a former ranch that was right outside, and the owners were really concerned because they saw the sprawl, a lot of the growth, and they wanted to keep it. Their legacy here and everything, and signed a favorable deal to the land trust, and this would be perpetually protected like this. But you notice here, the arrowleaf balsam root here, how the hills here are bare. Cows love that stuff. There's a lot of sugar. So anywhere you had old ranches, there's a lot of it in the Columbia River Gorge too. It's going to take a while for it to come back because the cows would just munch on that stuff. And you'll see the difference between an active farm and a protected land, the difference in the flowers in there. Castle Rock, this is the iconic summit outside of Wenatchee. And for years, you couldn't go there. It was private land. I mean, people did illegally, but the land trust made it a point to secure the land here and build this trail. And it looks kind of daunting on this side, but the trail comes up and you come up the back side, and there's my son, so we didn't do any scrambling up there. So really nice. This is, a great view of the Columbia River and looking out. And then I was saying earlier about this was shot in early November. Our last is right outside Mission Ridge. So if you hike paved road to the ski area, some nice little hikes in this area too. You can do a nice little 6 mile loop here with the western larches, great views. Marion and Clara Lakes, they're pretty when they're frozen. They're just small. It's great when they're frozen. There's no mosquitoes. And then when it's a great snowshoe route too if you've ever been up there in the wintertime. I think that concludes our tour. Yes. So thanks for coming out. I hope I've shown you lots of quieter trails to all the busy ones. There's more than just those 10 popular Instagram hikes, though they're in the book too. And love for you to have a book. I've got a bunch of them here. They're $20. I will eat the tax. And please visit me in the virtual world. You can find me at my website, on Instagram, and Facebook. And then I have most of my other titles with me too if you're interested. Urban Trails, Bellingham, Everett has the islands here, so those are good local hikes. And North Cascades is our backyard. And I live here, so I'm in no hurry to leave if anybody has any questions.